Love can be sweet, but sometimes it's soaked in blood. In tonight's Valentine's Day special novella, a vengeful killer returns on Valentine's night to claim what's hers. A chilling, blood-drenched horror story that proves love hurts.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and tonight is for all the lovers out there. Of course, by lovers, I mean lovers of horror, of fear, and of the unknown. So we have a very special gift for you right before Valentine's Day. A novella from Rob Fields, all about how love really can hurt. And we're going to get to that in just one moment, but I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you're subscribed, because on Friday, we have a mega compilation of some of the best Valentine's stories in Weekly Spooky's near 6-year history. You won't want to miss it. So make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app, and while you're at it, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you love what we're doing and want to join us on Patreon, just go to weeklyspooky.com/join. For as little as $1 a month, get bonus shows and a whole lot more. Find out everything about that at weeklyspooky.com/join. But now, as for the situation at hand, love is supposed to last forever. A promise made, a bond unbroken. But what happens when love is shattered? When a vow is betrayed? Some people move on. Others can't. And then there are the ones who come back. Tonight's story is about a young woman named Mary Lee Mirren. 1 year ago on Valentine's night, her perfect love story ended in the worst way imaginable. But now she's back, and her idea of romance is more cutthroat. So get cozy. We start the story right after this. Slasher, Valentine, Scorn by Rob Fields. 1 year ago, Lester Mills watched his beautiful girlfriend, Shore Abrams, dance in front of him as he rested on the bed attentively. He had been enamored by the senator's daughter ever since he had first encountered her. From that point, he wanted to take her out, and perhaps go all the way. Shore obviously felt the same way, because she surprised him by being in his car one day after school. Since then, Lester and Shore became an item. Now, Lester had a grin on his face in the hallways of Strickfield High School that pretty much summed it all up. I got the Holy Grail, and the rest of you suck. The two of them would have lots of study dates, complete with plenty of making out and getting to the point where they would almost have sex. However, Shore always put on the brakes, in spite of them getting fully naked as of late. When Lester pleaded with Shore to know why she wouldn't go all the way with him, she told him in simple terms. It has to be on Valentine's Day. She took his hands in hers. Come on, Lester, it'll be special. You and me, alone somewhere. I promise it'll be worth it. Lester wasn't sure how much longer he could wait for Shore, especially since a few other hot girls had recently expressed their interest in him. No, he wouldn't cheat on Shore, who was easily an 11 compared to those other girls that wanted to be with him. Okay, no, Shore was a 12. He would be patient and wait until Valentine's Day. When the day for lovers finally came, Lester went all out for Shore to make it as special as he could. He took her out for a nice dinner by candlelight. Then he took her to get coffee, since he knew she loved her lattes. From there, it was a movie the two of them had talked about seeing. Yes, it was a Vicky Valentine horror movie directed by Enrique Couto. Shore hadn't really been into horror movies, but when Lester introduced her to the wonderful B-movie world of the Babysitter Massacre films, Shore wasn't sure why she liked them. But something about them really clicked with her. Now she and Lester were watching the latest movie in the series called Daddy's Little Killer, based on the novel by David O'Hanlon. As the two lovebirds were watching Vicky Valentine, playing Larkin Combs, in all her naked glory, riding her male co-star in a bedroom scene, Shore surprised Lester by sitting on his lap and facing him as she slid her tongue into his mouth. The two of them were making out, hot and heavy, with Shore letting him feel her up as they kissed. Soon the two of them could wait no longer. They left the Strickfield Centennial Theater and drove to Strickfield Inn, where they had one of the townhouse suite rooms reserved. And now, here they were. Lester was on the king bed in his boxers, looking at Shore as she danced to some sexy music playing off his smartphone. Shore had been dancing in her bra and panties, and was finally peeling them off. At last naked, Shore slithered onto the king-sized bed and relieved Lester of his boxers. Seeing how much he truly desired her, she moved and joined him in their first sexual pairing. Lester knew that Shore was imitating the Vicky Valentine bedroom scene she had seen in the movie. He had imagined this very moment of now many times, but the real thing definitely did not do his daydreams justice. Lester remained on his back as Shore rocked his world. Neither of them were aware of the figure that slowly materialized out of a dark corner of the room. The figure was obviously feminine. Her costume consisted of a skin-tight white dress that barely contained her large breasts. On her face, she wore a white drama mask that always frowned. On her feet, she wore red platform stiletto heels. It wasn't likely that anyone would know what the Scream Queen killer was feeling, since one couldn't really see into her eyes through the mask. But all one had to do was look at the deadly weapon she had clutched in her hands. The lovers continued their sinful sexual passion. It was when Shore reached her climax that the Scream Queen fired up the deadly chainsaw with one quick pull of the cord. The revving of the saw would be the last thing Shore Abrams would ever hear before the blade easily cut into her back, continuing through her bones and vital organs, and coming out in between her breasts. All Shore could do was shake violently, with the blade rubbing up against her spinal cord, and bleed profusely all over Lester, who screamed again and again. Shore finally died when the Scream Queen eased the chainsaw back. Her body fell onto Lester fast. Blood was just everywhere. The Scream Queen's once white outfit was now splattered with wet crimson. Lester kept screaming as he pushed up on Shore to finally get her body off him. He sprang up off the bed, still screaming, and raced to the door to try and open it. Unfortunately, Shore had double-locked it. Lester would never get both locks undone before the Scream Queen would ease the chainsaw in between his legs and rev it up. Lester screamed even louder as the cold-blooded killer ran the chainsaw right up through his crotch. Now Lester shook as the Scream Queen easily sliced him right up the middle. When the blade finished at the top of his head, both halves of Lester Mills fell and landed with sickening plops on the floor. The walls, the door, and more of the Scream Queen were soaked in blood. She finished her gruesome work of art by sawing through the door and walking out into the cool night. She wasn't finished with just this unlucky couple, however. Her heels clacked as she walked to the next suite and sawed through the door to find another young, naked couple underneath the covers. The guy was on top of the girl, too scared to move. The girl frantically tried to move him off her to escape. It was all in vain as the Scream Queen approached them, raised the chainsaw, and ran the long blade right through them both at the same time. Again, blood splattered everywhere in a geyser. The Scream Queen herself, now dripping wet by the time she was finished.
Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Perspective, Mary Lee Mirren. As I saw the vicious carnage of Lester and his lost lover Shore's undoing playing out in disgusting clarity on my movie screen, I almost felt a sense of orgasmic delight and breathed as such when I put my hand to my busty chest. My husband, Frost, was obviously grossed out by this latest, fourth installment of the slasher franchise, in which the Scream Queen made her triumphant return in Valentine Hell. The tagline on the poster read, "She's back. There's gonna be hell to pay." Frost couldn't take it anymore. He groaned before he got up and made his way out of the auditorium. I got up and followed him out. Frost was quick to shake me off when I put my hands on his shoulders. Then he pointed right at me. "Look, Mary Lee, when I said I'd meet you halfway and watch a few horror movies with you every now and then, I never thought you'd be going for the bloodiest, most disgusting movies you could find." He pointed to the double doors of the auditorium. "How can you even watch that shit all the time?" I gave him a warm smile. "You knew I was a die-hard horror fan when you first met me." I raised my finger. "You do remember where it was you met me, right?" Frost's look said he couldn't deny me there. When he first met me, he was getting gas at the newly erected Sheetz station in Strongsville, Ohio, which was just south of the Cleveland area. When he finished filling his gas tank, he went inside to order food. While waiting for his order, 3 of us girls walked in from the west side doors. That was when Frost learned the Cinema Wasteland Movie and Memorabilia Expo was going on at the Best Western Plus next door. I reckoned Frost's eyes obviously fell to me first, since I was nicely endowed. My eyes soon met his. I gave him a warm smile, flattered that he was checking me out. From there, he approached me and struck up a conversation. Frost was so interested in me, he agreed to tag along as I went back to the convention. Frost quickly admitted he hated horror movies, winning my respect for his honesty, but I felt he was willing to brave the genre just to be with me. A few years later, we got married on Valentine's Day, his idea. Now it was our first anniversary. Frost gave me plenty of leeway when it came to decorating our newly built house just outside Strickfield. It wasn't like I spent tons of money on horror stuff. I already owned much of what I had. Lately, though, the more Frost saw from my decorations to my t-shirts to even my collection of movies and soundtrack records, the more he hated horror. Getting back to now, don't you ever watch anything else? Frost demanded. That's all you ever watch. I've never once seen you watch anything else. He raised his finger. Okay, scratch that. You watched some science fiction movies with me, but it was always horror with you. Seriously, Mary Lee, were you abused as a child or something? I sighed softly. You learned my entire family is into horror, so it was only natural that I came to love horror, I smirked. Besides, I never see you complaining about my horror t-shirts and tops when you can plainly see I never wear bras. No, Frost could never deny me that. Believe me, I loved that Frost found me sexy. Fortunately, my appearance never seemed to bother him. I wore makeup to look vampire pale with either blood red or black lipstick. I always wore horror earrings and polished my nails the same as my lips. I know I said I'd take you to see the new Babysitter Massacre movie for Valentine's Day today, our anniversary, Frost said. But I'm sorry, Mary Lee, I just can't take all this horror crap anymore. Especially your obsession with Vicky Valentine. She is, without a doubt, one of the worst actresses I have ever seen. She should have just stayed in porn. Her and Belinda Barnett both. And don't even get me started on that hack filmmaker Enrique Couto. Now he made me mad. I pointed right at him. You said those things just to spite me. Frost turned away from me and made his way to the exit. I hurried after him. The movie's not even half over yet, I protested. Then go back in and finish watching it, he snapped. I'm done. I'm not sitting through another minute of that shit. He stopped to face me. Seriously, Mary Lee, I'm done with horror. I'm done. I tightened my mouth and folded my arms in front of my chest. Again, you knew this Cleveland girl was a diehard horror fan when you met me. When we first had sex in the hotel elevator that same night, when we had sex again and again since I moved here to Strickfield to be with you, when you married me. I'll never change, Frost, never. He groaned and turned away from me. Again, I went after him. We walked out of the theater and headed to the parking lot, still arguing. As soon as we got in the car, he looked at me with disgust, then got back out. He leaned in the driver's side window and told me I could take the car home. I got back out myself and asked Frost what his problem was. He turned his back on me and stormed away. Again, I pursued him. We argued some more as we walked through downtown Village. It wasn't long before we ran into Desmond Weller and her friends. Frost would tell me he had gone to Strickfield Academy with Desmond for years. During one of our recent fights, he made it a point to tell me how Desmond was always one of the more popular girls there, because she was normal. It was those recent fights that got me doing some thinking. Desmond smiled sweetly at Frost and said hi as she passed us with her clique. Even though high school was over, Desmond still had an entourage. I said I had been thinking because Frost had been wanting to have sex with me less and less as of late. Oh, believe me, I noticed. Now I would be the first to admit that I loved morning sex. Before, Frost would be all over me when he woke up. But on Valentine's Day morning, our 1-year wedding anniversary, when I went to initiate with him, he quickly turned away from me and got out of bed. Before that came the late nights at his corporate position at Mirren Automotive, where he worked. He used to respond to my texts right away, but now he either responded much later or entirely ghosted me. Seeing the way Frost was checking out Desmond, I was beginning to understand everything now. What I didn't get was, why her? I was much more of a sex pot than that twig. Besides, didn't Mirren men love big-breasted women? Then it just suddenly happened. Desmond and Frost came together and started kissing, hungrily, right there in front of me. They didn't seem to care in the slightest that I was standing right there, gawking at them. "You son of a bitch," I choked out in barely a whisper at seeing the confirmation of his betrayal. Suddenly I was jumped from behind by Desmond's entourage. Those 3 skanks easily overpowered me when it came to the numbers game. After Frost and Desmond came apart, Desmond's crowd pulled me to my feet and held me as their leader approached. When I suddenly surprised Desmond's bitches and was breaking free, she herself placed a stun gun against my side and shocked me for good. I went limp faster than someone who'd taken a hard swing in the gut from Freddy Krueger's finger knives. I was still conscious enough to feel those bitches picking me up and hauling me on their shoulders to Desmond's car. Soon, I was being packed away in the trunk.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
"You coming with us, baby?" Desmond purred at her lover. "Oh, yeah," Frost replied enthusiastically. "The guys are waiting for us, as planned." What the hell was going on? As I started to move, Desmond zapped me with the stun gun again. After that, everything went black. I didn't know how long I was out, but I started to come to when lights flooded the trunk after it was opened. Then strong arms grabbed hold of me and pulled me out. When I shook my head fast and got my bearings back, I could see with the headlights from the other cars that those bitches brought me to some woods somewhere. When I saw Frost and Desmond, they were lip-locking, like they wanted to make sure I saw them. But what really got my attention was what I saw when I looked past them. I could see a kind of eerie red glow that seemed to come off the river nearby. Then my stomach dropped as I hoped and prayed we weren't where I thought we were. The backwoods of Strickfield. My eyes went back to my cheating husband and his mistress. They stopped kissing and looked lovingly at each other. Oh, did I mention how flat-chested Desmond practically was? Really, he wanted to be with her over me. Over me! Desmond grinned. "You ready to take care of our little problem, lover?" I roared, still angry that I'd been betrayed, and ran at Frost. I tackled him and started pounding him with my fists. Before I knew it, Frost's douchebag friends from high school, also his fraternity buddies in college, grabbed hold of me and yanked me off him. God damn it. This was an ideal horror movie situation, and I was too pissed off to even think straight. I could have run away. I probably wouldn't have gotten far in heels, but at least I might have given myself a chance. Now my horror movie-addled mind was telling me those bitches didn't bring me out here, so Frost's caveman friends could gang rape me. Those fuckers were going to kill me. "You really couldn't have just asked me for a divorce, you son of a bitch?" I yelled at my spouse. Frost gave me an evil sneer. "And let you take half of everything I worked hard for? Forget it. This way you not only won't get a single penny of my money, you won't live to tell about it." He gestured to the river. "Since you're such a big fan of horror movies, here you go, Mary Lee. My final wedding gift to you. You get to star in your very own horror movie." He leaned in to look me in the face. "Only problem here is, you ain't going to make it through this one." He raised his finger. "Oh, and you can scream as much as you want. According to the stories going around Strickfield about this place, no one will ever hear you." "Fuck you!" I roared. Then Desmond approached me. You know, Mary Lee, I've always hated you. Frost belonged to me. I was all set to take him for myself when you had to steal him away. With your big fun bags. She actually had the balls to grab and squeeze my breasts. I knew I'd really have to come up with a way to remove you from the Frost equation. Okay, maybe I don't have your incredibly awesome rack, but I do have killer instincts. In fact, the bastards holding me quickly let go and back away as Desmond suddenly splashed something hard right in my face. I screamed when I immediately felt the liquid burning incredibly hot all over my skin, then right in my eyes that were closed. Now I understood what that bitch splashed me with. Acid. I barely felt Frost's buddies grab hold of me again. I could feel them dragging me somewhere now. I was in way too much pain to even comprehend what would happen next. Suddenly I was forced on my knees. Then one of those bastards took a fistful of my long, black hair and slammed my full head into the water. As I was being held under the water of the river, I bucked and thrashed as I tried to fight for all I was worth, but I was severely outnumbered and outmuscled, and still in a lot of pain. Then the bastards pulled my head out. They still held me in between them when I heard Desmond order, "Strip her naked." "Huh?" I heard Frost utter. "Why?" Desmond answered, "If there's an investigation and your soon-to-be-dead wife's body is found, you want the police finding her wearing this costly new dress you bought for her?" Frost didn't hesitate. "Okay, guys, you heard her. Do it." Those cavemen quickly stripped me naked, tearing my dress and underwear away. They even took my shoes. Soon after, I felt smaller female hands taking hold of me. I was shoved forward again. Before I could get to my knees, my face was being shoved back into the river water. One of those fuckers got on my back to weigh me down as I struggled. Eventually, I would have no fight left. Since I was blind and only saw black, that would be the last thing I would ever see before I finally died. Little did that cheating bastard realize this incident would absolutely not be the last time he would ever see me. I was for sure coming back for my man. It was just a question of when, not if.
More scares to come. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
1 year later. It was Valentine's Day again. Frost was on top of his new wife as they engaged in some heated, newlywed sex. Desmond Mirren growled in delight as Frost pounded her the way she liked as she fondled her newly abundant breasts. He had purchased her as a wedding gift a few weeks prior. As soon as the couple climaxed together, Frost climbed off. Desmond turned into him and let him hold her close. Just an hour before, they had a small, private ceremony. "You never cease to amaze me, lover," Desmond purred softly. "Yeah, well, you know me," Frost replied. "What are we doing later?" she asked. "It's both Valentine's Day and our wedding day." "I'm all yours for the next 2 weeks, honey." He pecked her lips. "Now that I'm the vice president of the Strickfield branch of Mirren Automotive, that means I'm allowed to take time from work to spend with my new wife." She slithered on top of him and gazed into his eyes. Do we really have to go out again?" "We could just stay right here in bed and indulge each other the rest of the day." "But then I couldn't take you to our favorite place for dinner," Frost revealed. Desmond pecked his lips. "When you put it that way. But first, your new wife is still very hungry for you. She raised herself and was soon satiating her appetite for him again. Frost looked up at his vicious vixen and knew Desmond was exactly the kind of woman he wanted. Not only was she vicious, she had the killer instinct to both take what she wanted and eliminate those who got in her way. Desmond herself certainly didn't seem to have any regrets over killing Mary Lee a year ago this day. Frost embraced Desmond as she rode him to their next climax together. As soon as they had achieved it, she lowered herself to rest on top of him again. From there, they would discuss their plans for the remainder of their special day. Eventually, Desmond's heavy petting and kisses became too much. Frost gave in to his wife and engaged in some more heated sex before they finally took a shower together and got ready for more of their wedding day. When they stepped outside, Frost wished he would have just spent the rest of the day in bed with Desmond like she wanted. The sky made the afternoon look quite nasty. Desmond gasped when she saw the forks of lightning. It was also very windy. "Still want to go along with our plans, babe?" Frost asked. Desmond contemplated it. "We're already dressed, lover. Besides, we both want to play." From there, they got into Frost's Ferrari and sped to the main road. Frost turned and drove away from Strickfield, taking them in the direction of Ridgeway Heights to their favorite restaurant for their special celebration dinner. But no planning could have prepared them for what was to come. Resurrection. It was here in the backwoods of Strickfield where I was murdered, and it would be here where I would be reborn. I emerged from this hellish river and made my way to land. It was there where I saw a man gawking at me. Maybe he was admiring my beautiful body. Maybe he was scared as hell, seeing how I came out of the water. At least I can see again. The winds blew harder and harder. The lightning was just dangerous, the way it seemed to flash nonstop. I looked down at the water, which was now to my knees, and saw it shimmer with this blue energy. I even felt like I had been zapped. The lightning must have struck the water and charged whatever pollution. Maybe it was a river, straight from hell. Anyway, I felt I had movement and went to leave my watery grave. The blowing winds reminded me that I was very much naked. I looked down at my form and saw I still looked whole. Soon I was finally out of the river. I loved that I was back on land again. I had no idea how long I was underwater. When I reached the man, he had a hunting rifle in his hands. Suddenly, the lightning flashed and briefly lit up everything. That was when the man gasped, dropped his gun, and screamed as he turned and ran like hell. I went after him. I didn't have to run since the man was kind of old and seemed to be jogging. I kept following him until he led me to his cabin. He got inside and slammed the big, heavy door. When I reached the door, I smashed the bottoms of my fists against it. Oh, Lordy!" I heard him whimpering inside. Please let me alone. I ain't ready to die." I kept pounding on the door until I sent it falling forward into the cabin, making it hit the hard floor. The lightning flashed and revealed me to him in his doorway, making him scream. I came into the cabin and saw he had some heart-shaped decorations around his living room. They weren't the nice decorations you could buy in stores. He probably made do with what he had on hand. When the lightning flashed again, the man saw me fully once more. He was looking at my face as he screamed in fright again. The next thing I knew, he was coming at me with a knife. I raised my hand to block it, but he stabbed me right through my palm. I knocked the old man down and removed the knife from my hand. I gasped when my hand healed up, like it had never happened. I still had the old man's knife and went at him. "No!" the man groaned, slipping and falling on his back. Then he screamed as I raised the knife and slammed the blade right into his gut. "No!" I stabbed him repeatedly, making him bleed red. Red. Nice. Beautiful. Pretty. Red. Red. Like Valentine's Day.
Are you afraid? Good. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
I dropped the knife and stood up. I got some of that old man's blood all over my body. No matter, seeing as it was raining buckets outside. Seeing the nearby calendar, one where you'd rip the days off when they were done, I saw it was February 14th. But it was 1 year later. Then I remembered what had happened to me as my memories came flooding back. I remembered my husband's betrayal. I even remembered how I came to be naked. But how was I even able to see? I shouldn't have been able to do that. No matter. What does matter is getting back to Strickfield and finding my man. I couldn't believe Frost decided to end our marriage by killing me. Oh, was he going to be surprised when he'd learn I'd be coming back into his life. I turned and left the cabin. The rain washed over me fast. The old man's blood was off me in no time. I eventually found my way to the main road and knew exactly where I was. From there, I turned and started walking home, back to Strickfield. I walked the main highway tirelessly. The lightning kept flashing, the thunder explosive, and the rain just saturating. I had walked for several minutes before something got my attention. It was headlights, meaning a car was approaching. Who was stupid enough to be out tonight? I would get my answer when the car pulled up right beside me. Then I heard this woman call out, "Miss, are you... When I squatted a little and looked in through the woman's window, both her and her man screamed. "Oh my God!" the woman cried. Then she turned to her man. "Go! Go!" I quickly reached inside the open window and grabbed the woman. I easily pulled her out into the storm with me. She slipped out of my hands and fell on her tushy. Looking down at her, she was wearing a tight-fitting white dress. She was also nicely endowed, though not quite like me. But that dress... Yes! I lifted the woman to her feet. Then I grabbed hold of her long blonde hair from behind and slammed her face into a nearby tree. From there, I turned the ditz around and saw I had crushed her face good. I let go of her and watched her drop. I hadn't been paying attention to the car, but the lights suddenly illuminated me. I turned around to see the woman's guy coming at me with his car. Seeing his face, he looked like he was screaming. He'd seen me kill his girlfriend or wife, who knows. I moved out of the way and let him slam head-on into a huge redwood tree. The car exploded soon after. Since I really didn't need to concern myself with him anymore, I turned my attention back to the woman. Seeing her clothes made me remember that the rain was washing down my naked body. Since this woman no longer had any need for her clothes, I worked on undressing her. The dress was a bit snug on my body, but it felt nice. We both must have had the same size feet, because the red platform heels fit perfectly. As I was ready to leave, something else caught my eye. I lowered myself and picked up what appeared to be a mask. As I stood up straight again, I wondered why this woman was wearing a costume. Then I remembered her man was also wearing one. He kind of looked like Cupid. They were going to a costume party of some kind on Valentine's Day, which meant this woman was dressed up as the Scream Queen from those Valentine slasher movies. I had seen deluxe costumes available online for the Scream Queen, which came with a high-quality dress and a sad drama mask, plus the red platform stiletto heels. Of course, you had to give your exact sizes for everything when you ordered the complete costume. Then I remembered Frost and me had our big blow-up while we were watching a Valentine movie at the Strickfield Centennial Theater. I remember how we always hated Valentine, especially when she portrayed the Scream Queen. Everything that was happening right then were omens. First, I came back to life exactly 1 year from the day I was murdered, on Valentine's Day. Then I came across the woman wearing a Scream Queen costume. Now, it was mine. I turned the mask around so I could put it on over my face. Again, perfect fit. Now that I knew how to get revenge on Desmond Weller and everybody else close to her, I continued my way to Strickfield. Frost said I was starring in my very own horror movie a year ago. Well, I guess tonight is the sequel to my movie. Now we were heading into the parts where what those pieces of shit did to me would come back to bite each and every one of them in the ass. And then some. Revenge would be mine. And as for Frost, he would be mine once more.
Are you afraid? Good. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Later, Frost and Desmond Mirren ultimately decided against leaving Strickfield when they saw the storm was getting much worse. Instead, they changed course and drove to a ranch about 2 miles down the road from Denoyer's Grill. They pulled in, drove up the long driveway, and parked next to the car near a metal barn. The couple got out of the vehicle and went into the building. There, horror filmmakers Jesse and Jenny Corgan were directing a scene for a new movie they were close to wrapping up. Frost had been a producer of the Corgan twins' films for some time, despite the fact that he hated horror. The truth was he had known the twins since meeting them outside Strickfield Academy. Even then, the twins were perfecting their talents at directing movies and making special effects. Now he was watching them direct Sheila Darling and Miles Huntington in some scenes needed for Spoiled Brat, a new slasher film starring Valentine and Belinda Barnett. Frost never admitted it to the Corgan twins, but he still never thought highly of their two biggest stars. Still, as long as their movies continued making money, Frost and Desmond watched as the Corgan twins' latest discoveries were selling what would be a nasty breakup between this husband and wife. Sheila Darling played the wife to Miles Huntington and had just learned his character had been cheating on her with that little slut whom Valentine played. Vicky and Belinda, Frost's cousin Bethany Mirren in real life, had shot all of their scenes before they left to go on their honeymoon after getting married earlier in the day at the courthouse. In fact, Frost and Desmond had gotten married right after their wedding. When the scene was over, the Corgan twins told their actors to take a break and went to address their friends. The four of them talked for a little bit. When the actors were finished with their breaks, the Corgans went back to work shooting the remaining scenes in this first of their 2 soundstages. It was then that Frost's phone rang. "Yeah?" he answered, when he saw his friend Ron Marbles on the caller ID. "Oh, holy Jesus, you gotta help me, Frost!" Ron shrieked. "She's gonna kill my ass!" "What the hell's going on over there?" Frost demanded. "You and Paris getting another fight? I told you you were on your own if she found out you were fucking around on her again." "It ain't my wife, Frost," Ron returned. "It's some crazy big-titted bitch wearing a costume from that horror movie. I don't remember the name, but she's dressed all in white and has a mask on." A quick gulp. "Oh, Jesus, she just stabbed me! I'm bleeding out! I ain't gonna make it to a hospital!" Frost rolled his eyes. "You know, if what you're saying is true, your dumb ass could have called 911 instead of wasting time calling me. You know what, Ron? Fuck off." As Ron started cursing at Frost, he ended the call and explained the situation to Desmond, who just rolled her own eyes in response. Loose ends. So funny. That idiot Ron Marbles just told Frost I was a big-titted bitch. In a way, I supposed I was fulfilling one of his weird sexual fantasies. I remembered that pervert and how he was always looking at porno mags with women sporting big fake breasts. Anyway, I caught that asshole completely off guard when I surprised him and relieved him of his hunting knife. Then I stepped into him and gave a couple good thrusts. When he turned and ran, all I had to do was take my time and stalk him. I was having such a rush being a horror movie killer and stalking my victims. Now I found Ron in the barn, bleeding out fast. I easily heard Ron talking on his phone, telling me right where he was hiding. Oh, the look on his face when I surprised him behind that big firewood pile. He screamed like a little bitch when I stabbed him a few more times. Ron groaned as he held where I stabbed him and stumbled about. I followed him nice and easy. Then he suddenly turned and tried backhanding me. Instead, he fell onto his side and turned onto his back. I lowered myself and put a knee on him so he wouldn't surprise me again. Now, he was looking right at my tits. You're Mary Lee," Ron groaned in pain. "You gotta be, but I don't know how. We killed you." He had very little life left, and he tried reaching up to grope me. I knocked his hand away and kept stabbing him until he was finally finished off. Some of Ron's beautiful red blood splattered on my costume. But wasn't that usually what happened to the Scream Queen when she was dispatching her victims? I never believed she ever once made a kill without getting her costume bloody from it. Then I looked out of the barn and saw a light on in an upstairs window. Ah, so Ron did have someone in his life. He did mention a wife to Frost, and it sounded like he was cheating on her. I decided to go inside and see who the unlucky bitch was. I left the barn and was about to go up onto the back porch when I saw a tooth saw lying beside some more firewood. Then I had an awful idea. Well, awful for the bitch who was about to be on the wrong end of it. I swapped the hunting knife for the saw and climbed the steps. As soon as I walked into the house, I heard some fast clacking sounds and stopped when this little schnauzer appeared. It looked up at me with its bearded little face, but didn't do anything else. I was ready to kill the dog, but it was much too cute. I left the dog alone and walked to the stairway. Before I climbed the stairs, I saw how beautiful the living room looked. There were all kinds of Valentine's decorations, ranging from lots of red, white, and pink hearts. On the coffee table, there was a huge box of chocolates and this big bouquet of blood-red roses. Ron was a pervert and a cheating bastard, but he clearly still had a soft spot for whomever was his life partner. Then it occurred to me that Ron was planning on taking her out on a date tonight. I finally climbed the stairs. When I reached the top, I saw a faint light nearby and walked in that direction until I came to the open bathroom door. Really? Ron Marbles actually scored Paris Chiffon? I remembered her being one of the snarkiest bitches I knew in Desmond Weller's clique. Now she was soaking in a bubbly bathtub. I remembered how Paris was the first to strike me that night. I'd heard from people how cold this bitch could be. They said Paris killed animals without thinking twice about it. I was surprised she and Ron actually had that little doggy downstairs. I walked into the bathroom and stood over her.
More scares to come. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Paris looked so nice and comfy, soaking in her bubbly tub like she was. Then she suddenly opened her eyes and shrieked when she saw the Scream Queen, with a tooth saw in her hand and some of her honey's blood on her dress. "Get out of here, you pervert!" she snapped. "Don't make me get out of... Ah!" I grabbed Paris's hair and held her in place. Oh, did she ever scream when I brought the tooth saw to her throat and proceeded to cut. Paris struggled and gurgled with each nice and easy stroke. Such beautiful Valentine red. Soon Paris went limp, forever, when I began cutting through her neck bone. I continued until I could easily hold Paris's head up by her hair. The body squirted more beautiful red out of the open neck before it finally sank below the suds. Soon the water took on Valentine red and pink. So pretty. I looked at Paris's head with its eyes and mouth wide open. Then I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror and went to it. Just as I thought, my skin looked perfectly intact. Did that foul river in the backwoods of Strickfield keep me preserved somehow? I knew it wasn't just plain water the night I was murdered. I removed my mask and now felt deep sadness. Soon, that sadness turned to rage. Then I tightened my free fist as I looked up at the ceiling and screamed. After I saw my face again, I put my mask back on. I looked at myself in the mirror again. It was all clear to me now. Mary Lee Mirren was dead. I was now the Scream Queen. For real. And one way or another, I was going to get every last one of those motherfuckers who took part in killing me a year ago, tonight. First, I would kill every last piece of shit who followed Frost and Desmond. Then I would finally make Desmond herself suffer. And then, Frost would be all mine once more. For all those involved, I was going to make Valentine's Day a holiday to be remembered. It was time for me to continue on my way. As I left the bathroom, I dropped Paris's head into the open toilet. I looked around upstairs, but didn't find anybody else. Oh, but I did find something very important in the master bedroom. Next to the landline phone was a little black book. I picked it up and opened it to find many important names. It didn't take me long to find everybody else who was involved in my murder. Knowing where the rest of them lived now, I left the bathroom and went back downstairs. Again, the little schnauzer waited and was watching me. As I was about to open the back door again, the little doggy finally started barking at me. If it weren't for the fact it was so goddamn cute, I'd have put it out of its misery. Aw, who was I kidding? I wasn't going to kill no dogs or cats unless they were vicious. When I stepped outside, I saw Ron's big pickup truck and went to it. I hopped inside the huge compartment and saw the keys were already in the ignition. Even dead, I could still drive. Looking around the compartment, I could tell Ron took very good care of his truck, much like he made sure to take good care of Paris. I fired up the engine and felt how nice she rumbled. Eager, I put the truck in gear and took a nice long joyride to my next kills.
Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Across Strickfield, Frost and Desmond invited the Corgan twins back to their house for drinks. By this time, the storm had finally stopped. At first, Jesse and Jenny refused, saying that the couple should celebrate their wedding night themselves. When Frost and Desmond both insisted, the Corgans gave in and followed them back to their house. Once they were all inside, the twins saw the massive amount of decorations for the Day of Lovers. Hearts were seemingly everywhere, from the living room to even Christmas-like tinsel lining the stairway's railings. Candy dishes were in each room and filled with anything from Hershey's Kisses to candy hearts with little Valentine's Day messages on them. In the corner of the living room was a Valentine's Day tree decorated with tinsel, ornaments, red and pink lights, and even a flashing heart at the very top. But what suddenly got everybody's attention were the large heart-shaped boxes of chocolates on the dining room table. Desmond turned to her new husband. "Babe, I know you asked me to put plenty of candy out, but I know for a fact I did not put out these boxes of chocolates." Frost eased his new wife into his arms. "Oh, I had a little delivery made while we were out. Nothing but the best for you." After the couple shared a brief, passionate kiss, Frost let her go and watched as she opened one of the boxes to reveal the imported chocolates he knew she enjoyed. Then he felt a little angry at how he had tried to give Mary Lee those same chocolates in the past, but she was never very big into candy. She only seemed to enjoy Valentine's Day since it was their wedding anniversary, but she gave off vibes and impressions that she was never fully into this holiday. Seeing Desmond enjoying a few of the chocolates made him happy that Mary Lee was likely still rotting away somewhere in that river in the backwoods of Strickfield. At the same time, his heart felt heavy. Desmond offered the Corgan twins some of her chocolates to go with the expensive red wine Frost had poured and passed around. After clinking their glasses in a toast to friendship, the wedding, and Valentine's Day, they went into the living room to spend more time together. At first, the talk would mostly be about the movie the Corgan twins were currently working on, Spoiled Brat. Eventually, conversations began reaching the point to where the four of them were influenced by the wine and were opening up more, which was when Desmond began talking about things sexual in nature. After she finished another glass of wine, she inquired as to whether or not the twins had ever been sexual with each other, as close as the two sisters seemed to be. All the Corgan twins did was giggle a little, which made Frost wonder. He himself wasn't going to pursue the matter, but he loved that Desmond had no filter, especially when alcohol was involved. Soon, Frost got yet another phone call from yet another one of his friends. He got off the couch and went into the kitchen to take the call. Louis Vance was also complaining that someone was trying to kill him. "What the hell's going on?" he mouthed. "This is the third call like this I got tonight." As he listened to Louis describe his pursuer, he was sensing a pattern. He couldn't place who the person was, but he knew it had something to do with everybody involved in Mary Lee's murder a year ago. First, Ron Marbles had called. Next was Chuck Odo. Now was Louis. Suddenly, Frost heard Louis scream on the other end. A few moments later, the call ended. Not even a minute later, Frost got a return call from Louis on FaceTime. Frost moved into the basement stairway and took the call. He saw Louis secured to one of his dining room chairs. Clearly, the killer had his smartphone and was positioning the device for Frost's benefit. Now the face of the Scream Queen filled the screen. She never spoke a single word, nor could Frost see into the eye holes of the sad drama mask that concealed her true identity. When the Scream Queen stepped back a little, Frost gasped. He knew Mary Lee's bodily dimensions better than anybody else. There was no mistaking those curves that the blood-spattered white dress barely contained. The wavy ebony hair was the same length and style that Mary Lee kept it. Frost didn't want to believe that this woman was Mary Lee, but the Scream Queen's body looked pretty spot on. Also, how many times had he seen and made love to that very body in all its naked glory? "What do you want?" Frost demanded. "Are you really Mary Lee? There's no way you could be alive. No way!" The Scream Queen stared at him for a little bit longer before she turned away from the phone and moved to Louis. When Louis struggled and groaned to imply that she let him go, she slapped him hard, then raised her finger. His eyes immediately went to it. She stepped back and turned on a nearby light to reveal lots and lots of Valentine's decorations. Many of them were lights that looked familiar, similar to ones for Christmas, only they were Valentine's colors. But what really got Louis's attention was seeing his wife Carney, who was also involved in Mary Lee's murder. On one side of the phone, Louis gasped. On the other side, Frost gasped too. Carney had what appeared to be a vacuum cleaner hose shoved into her mouth and taped securely. Her wrists were tied behind her back, and her ankles were bound together. The Scream Queen picked up Louis's smartphone and brought the camera closer to emphasize Carney's situation. She whimpered and was crying. The phone now followed the vacuum hose from her to out the side door and into the garage. The other end of the vacuum hose was secured to the exhaust pipe of the big pickup truck that once belonged to Ron Marbles. Frost knew what the Scream Queen intended to do. "Go ahead, you crazy bitch, kill her. You think I care?" he told her cruelly. While the Scream Queen couldn't make her mask talk, she could still give him that vibe, as if she was telling him, "You will." Frost watched the Scream Queen start Ron Marble's truck. The souped-up custom engine roared. From there, the Scream Queen returned the phone to where she could position it to see Carney Vance struggling. Then the Scream Queen disappeared, no doubt returning to the truck. Frost still didn't care that the Scream Queen was likely going to kill Carney, using the truck's exhaust. Then he heard the loud roaring and knew the Scream Queen was revving up the motor. He could barely hear Carney screaming, but he could see her slender belly starting to get fat as it inflated. Then the motor went into a continuous rev until Carney's belly exploded. A great deal of blood and viscera went everywhere. Clearly, Lewis loved his wife because he wept at having seen her gruesome death up close. Soon the Scream Queen was back in the picture. Again she looked at Frost. Again her inanimate drama mask spoke volumes, as if asking him if she fully had his attention now. The next thing both Frost and Lewis knew, the Scream Queen revealed a huge Valentine's cake, shaped as a heart. Frost remembered that Lewis had this cake custom made for Carney. The Scream Queen set the cake down, which was beautifully decorated, with red and pink swirled frosting, and had candy hearts randomly placed on the outside. Frost could easily see the modifications the Scream Queen herself had added. The Scream Queen produced a candle lighter and effortlessly lit the long wicks atop the big red candles on the cake. With each she lit, the wicks sparkled angrily and seemed to slowly move downward. Frost understood exactly what kind of candles they were. Upon lighting the last wick, the Scream Queen dropped the lighter and looked into the phone one last time. Again, her unmoving mask spoke volumes to him. "I'm coming for you, and Desmond."
Shh, it was only the wind. You're safe. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
From there, the Scream Queen exited the screen. Lewis screamed into his gag and tried to break free. He soon fell onto his side near his recently murdered wife. The candles exploded, one after the other. Soon the phone was damaged enough to where the call was terminated. Frost knew he had to get the Corgan twins out of the house and get Desmond to safety. He slid his phone back into his pocket and went back upstairs. When he entered the living room, he found Jenny Corgan sitting on Desmond's lap, facing her. The two women were locked in heated kissing as Jesse watched them. Frost always knew that Desmond would be unpredictable, especially in their sex life. Under normal circumstances, he would have entertained whatever crazy sexual fantasy his wife had in her diabolical mind. However, knowing that Mary Lee was on her way, he had no choice but to break things up. When Frost eased Desmond and Jenny apart, his wife glared at him and slurred, "And you stopped us because? Could I talk to you for a second? Alone?" he asked her. Desmond sharpened her glare and pointed a shaky finger at him as she gave a drunk smile. "Anything you gotta say to me, you can say in front of these delicious twin babes here, especially since you're gonna be involved in what I got planned for tonight." Frost groaned. Not because he knew what Desmond was looking to set up for them, but that there wouldn't be time. He knew he would have to persuade his wife without drawing any suspicion from the twins. Even though the two redheads were also drunk, he knew they had a natural hell of a constitution. In the past, he had seen them drink nearly a case of beer each before they even started feeling buzzed. Frost had to think. Then he took a gamble and went to Jessie Corgan. He took her hand and yanked her to her feet, making her giggle. Then he took Jenny's hand and brought her to him. Now that he had both Corgan twins in his arms, he proceeded to kiss Jessie. Then he kissed Jenny. Suddenly, Desmond sprang to her feet. Frost could tell she was drunk enough to where she was tipsy. She nearly fell back onto the couch. Still, she stabilized herself and came right into her husband in the center. Then she locked eyes with him. "Hey!" Desmond jabbed her finger into his chest. With each drunken word, she said, "I saw them first." Frost knew he would have to provoke Desmond some more to get her to do what he needed. "Oh yeah? Well, I'm taking them out back to the hot tub." He gave her a spiteful smirk. "Then you can watch me fuck both of them at the same time on our wedding night, instead of you." The Corgan twins both looked at each other. "Ooh." Then they started laughing again. As Desmond growled, Frost turned each Corgan twin in the direction of the back door and playfully smacked them both on their rears. "Outside, you lusty vixens, both of you." Jessie giggled. "But we don't have swimsuits." Jenny really laughed as she playfully smacked her clones behind. "That's never stopped us before." She raised her finger. "And what are you talking about, Jessie? We have two perfectly good birthday suits that are perfect for any party." Jessie giggled again. "I love you." Jenny giggled back. "I love you." From there, the Corgan twins held hands as they made their way to the back door. Before Desmond could pursue them, Frost snatched her to him. Desmond glared into his eyes. "Those twins are mine." She hiccuped once. Again, she tapped a long fingernail on his chest with each word. "I am having them both." Frost shook her. "We're going to be the ones getting majorly screwed if we don't get out of here, Desmond. Mary Lee's on her way here. I don't know how, but she's back from the dead. She killed all our friends and is on her way. She'll be here any minute." He shook her again. "Snap out of it, God damn it!" Desmond seemed as though she was trying to be serious. Then she lost herself and laughed. "Oh, listen to you!" She pointed at him and nearly fell over. "You believe Mary Lee, your ex-wife, is still alive. You really expect me to believe you, you poor dope!" Frost groaned and was about to try reasoning with her again when he had a very bad feeling and turned to see bright lights and the roaring of a motor coming right at the nearby window. Ground Zero. Those two adulterers barely got out of the way as Ron Marble's truck crashed right through the big window and went into the house. Desmond was losing her goddamn mind at having the home wrecked. Why would she even care? She never put her heart and soul into that house. I was there when it was built. Frost and I moved into it together, and we're supposed to live the rest of our natural lives there. Desmond only moved in after she plotted to remove me and take Frost for herself. And Frost went along with her. All because I was a diehard horror fan? Oh, was I ever going to give my husband and that home-wrecking whore a lesson in being a horror fan and what I learned from those movies. Frost moved to the truck that was stuck in the kitchen as the engine was still roaring and spinning its back tires. He easily got the door open and saw the hunting knife that was holding down the gas pedal. His favorite movie was Roadhouse, so a little homage just for him. "What the?" Frost demanded. "Where the hell is she?" Suddenly, they heard two screams outside. I came upon those two redheads sitting naked in the hot tub. I was so ready to make beautiful, red Valentine's Day punch out of their blood.
You're not safe yet. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Then I realized I was now looking at two of my heroes in the Corgan twins, and they were looking at me, dressed up as one of their greatest creations, the Scream Queen. The Corgan twins screamed again and quickly bailed from the hot tub. I had engaged in threesomes with my husband during our marriage in the past to spice up our sex life. Believe me, I wouldn't have said no to some quality time in the bedroom with those two. Who was I kidding? There was no way I could kill either of them. Not the Corgan twins. I would have been robbing horror fans big time, and I damn sure wasn't taking part in that. The Corgan twins grabbed their clothes and moved to go inside the house. Guess I was going to have to get Frost and Desmond while the Corgan twins watched. Maybe I'd give them new material for a future film. Hey, now that was I really undead? Then I remembered earlier in Ron Marble's bathroom and knew the answer to that one. Just then I saw one of our resident prick neighbors. August Ruiz was always giving Frost and me a hard time whenever we were getting really frisky in the hot tub. Now he was seeing me as the Scream Queen and started with his trash talking. Had it even occurred to him that I was carrying something deadly in my hands? A pole chainsaw. Frost used to have a hell of a time trying to make it run. One simple pull was all it took for me to fire it up. Ruiz was still trash-talking me as I was revving up my latest toy. Okay, fine. I moved to him. He really thought I wouldn't do it. His mistake. I nicked him on the leg to both make him bleed out fast and bring him to his knees. I gasped when I saw more. Pretty. Red. Then I stepped back a little and watched him beg me to stop. If I was the merciful final girl in my movie, perhaps I'd have spared him. But I was playing the role of the killer. So that meant August Ruiz screamed as I turned him into coleslaw. As with all my other victims, his beautiful, perfect, red juices splattered all over me. I knew I wasn't Vicky Valentine, but I could really get used to being her alter ego. After I finished off that shitheel, I turned my attention back to the house, still carrying my pole chainsaw. I revved it as I made my way to the big-ass entrance I had created with the truck. Once inside, I didn't see anybody. Since I'd seen enough slasher movies, it was time to think like the slasher herself. The other doors weren't open. The windows were still closed. That meant my victims were still inside the house, somewhere. I tensed up at how much fun I was having as the killer in my very own horror movie. I knew exactly where they were likely to be hiding. Upstairs. They wouldn't be stupid enough to hide in the basement, especially when they had the Corgan twins guiding them. I mean, those two redheads made me. Well, the Scream Queen anyway. No, Desmond was the one who made me. I still had my intuition as I walked my sexy ass upstairs. When I reached the top, I knew there were plenty of places to hide. But I was mostly sure I knew where to look. I made my way to the master bedroom and went in. Nobody in sight. I could check the walk-in closet, but I didn't believe the Corgan twins would get themselves in that situation. I turned my attention to the other door, just a short walk from the bed. I revved up my toy and sliced right through the door. Jackpot. The screams confirmed they were hiding out on the balcony, overlooking the swimming pool. As soon as I was through, Frost was the last one to jump. Good move. They all had the heated water below to break their falls. Now they were all moving to get out of the pool. I stepped onto the balcony railing and dropped to the deck below, landing precisely on my platform stiletto heels. "Oh shit!" a Corgan twin shrieked when she saw how dangerously close I was to her, and quickly turned to help her sister out of the water. The Corgans looked my way. "Is that you, Vicky?" one of them asked. "What the hell are you doing here?" the other one demanded. "You're supposed to be on your honeymoon." Then I heard a slight chiming and saw one of them pulling her smartphone out. You had to love modern phones being waterproof these days. "Vicky and Bethany are currently blowing up my phone with date pics," one twin told her sister and showed her. "Yours too, probably." "Screw this, I'm calling the police. I'm calling the police," the Corgan with the phone groaned. But as she started dialing, Frost deliberately bumped into her to send the phone back into the pool. Yeah, he wouldn't want to have to explain to the police about last year, right? "You idiot!" the twin fired at him. "Come on, let's get out of here," Frost yelled. Funny thing, when they looked right at me, it was as if, I don't know, like he missed me. Knowing I was definitely not Vicky Valentine, the Corgan twins screamed. Then one of them slapped Frost. From there, the three of them scurried away. I started after them, just as they reached Desmond. I grabbed hold of Desmond and shoved her onto her back. Holding her down with my heel, I revved my baby again, intent on decapitating her. Desmond screamed, which made my undead heart pound with excitement. As I lowered the saw to claim her head, I heard another scream and was tackled. The weapon fell out of my hands and went dead on hitting the pool deck. "Leave my wife alone, Mary Lee!" Frost roared and started punching my mask. Suddenly, I clutched his throat. I easily got Frost off me and slowly stood up. I moaned softly to myself when my husband became transfixed by my abundant breasts. He never could stop looking at them. I laughed inside. Death by titties. I grabbed Frost and yanked his face in between his obsessions. I held him there as he screamed inside my cleavage. I was killed by drowning in water, so he would drown himself in a most deliciously ironic way. Okay, slightly different methods, but same results. Out of desperation, he suddenly grabbed 2 handfuls of my tushy and lifted me off my feet. Then he pushed me hard, sending me into the pool.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
I went underneath the water. It wasn't long before I emerged, slowly, walking from the deep end to the shallow. The Corgan twins screamed and grabbed Desmond and Frost. Once I was back on the deck, I retrieved my pole chainsaw and went after them again. In the lighting, I saw much of the blood came off my dress, making it shiny and white again. Well, I would soon splatter it crimson again. And wouldn't you know it, they were trying to escape in Frost's favorite sports car, except it would prove to be another horror movie moment. It wouldn't start. The car kept revving and revving, but no ignition. For the record, I never touched the car. Anyway, I pulled on the cord to bring my saw back to life and gave it a rev of my own. "Come on!" I heard Frost screaming. The car never did start. I revved the weapon again and cut through the driver's side glass. Frost screamed again as Desmond got out on the passenger side. The Corgan twins were right behind her. Frost managed to get to the other side and get out. Frost looked right at me now. "Leave us alone!" Then he approached me. "Take me if that's what you want, but leave Desmond and the twins alone." And again, he looked at me, as if Did he really miss me? Did Frost still love me? I shook my head fast. No, Frost and Desmond both had to die for killing me. I revved the saw again. I had Frost dead to rights, but I just knocked him on his ass and went after Desmond. The women all stumbled over their own feet as they ran off. But they were still quite drunk. Also, Desmond was wearing heels. The Corgan twins were barefoot. Guess the twins didn't have time to get completely dressed when I crashed their little Valentine's Day get-together. Again, I wouldn't hurt the Corgans. At least, I hoped I wouldn't have to. But then Desmond suddenly tightened her fists and marched right at me, showing me she still had her killer instinct. "You're not getting my husband," she roared when she reached me. When I swung the saw, the bitch ducked from getting her head sliced off. When she came back up, she grabbed the bar and started trying to fight me for the weapon. I pushed her away and dropped it. Like the last time, it died on hitting the ground. I reached out and throttled Desmond's neck with one hand. She gasped and gagged and struggled to break free. Then Frost appeared and ripped my mask away from me. He dropped it and gagged. Good Lord! Desmond gagged herself on seeing my face now. Even the Corgan twins were holding their mouths when they saw my face was only the bare skull. The bare skull Desmond made when she threw that highly corrosive acid in my face 1 year ago tonight. No muscle fibers or eyeballs, just completely bare bone and teeth. "Do you really miss me, lover?" I asked my husband, speaking for the first time since coming back from the dead. The reckoning. Desmond dropped to her knees and threw up heavy. Wow, she really drank a lot of wine. No wonder she was so tipsy. No wonder Frost had to help her. I hated admitting it, but Frost and Desmond genuinely cared for one another, as evidenced by their repeated attempts to save each other. But I was the wife who was a die-hard horror fan, and Desmond was supposedly normal, right? I pointed at Frost. You yourself watched enough horror movies with me to know that when you try and bury a secret like what happened last Valentine's Day, it never stays buried. The Corgans heard me. One of them called out, "What the fuck did you two do?" I looked right at them. It still surprised me that I could fully see, even without eyes. Anyway, I revealed everything. I think I creeped everyone out when my jawbone moved to my words. Let's just say the Corgan twins would never look at their former friends the same way ever again. Finding out you murdered the ex, tried to cover it up in the backwoods of Strickfield, Then learning your secret didn't stay buried wouldn't exactly leave a good taste in anyone's mouth. But Desmond wasn't giving up so fast. Her bitterness combined with her drunkenness didn't make for a good combination. Okay, so what, Mary Lee? You're back from your watery grave. You really think you're taking Frost back? I won't let you. I'll keep fighting you for him. She pointed right at me. I'm much more of a woman for him than you ever were. I looked up at the dark sky and laughed. My jaw moved to every syllable of my laughter, creeping the Corgan twins and Frost out. When I finished laughing, Desmond went and grabbed Frost's baseball bat out of the garage. She roared and ran at me with it. I stopped her just before she could connect. Now the two of us were fighting for the bat. I could see Frost trying to get the Corgan twins out of harm's way, but they both shoved him on his ass and ran. Soon they were in their car. The Corgans backed up and were moving to the road. Their car was wobbling a little, but they soon kept going. No doubt those redheads were still a bit drunk when they turned onto the main road, but I figured they'd be okay. Now it was just me, Frost, and his home-wrecking bitch.
You're not safe yet. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Desmond screamed like a woman possessed and wrenched the bat away from me. Then she swung fast and connected with my head. She hit hard, but my head still remained attached to my body. I wobbled a little. Then she got me again. When she drew back for another hit, Frost actually grabbed hold of the bat. "Stop!" Desmond growled. "Let go!" She thrust the bat forward to crack Frost in between the eyes and knock him out. Then she turned her attention back to me. "Just die, Mary Lee!" Desmond screamed. "I can't believe Frost still loves you. He is my husband now." She cracked me again. "Mine! You're never getting him back. I'll kill you as many times as I have to keep him." I suddenly stopped her bat when she went for broke. Now I looked Desmond in the eyes. Guess that means Frost has 2 wives now, huh? Well, I can fix that. Desmond shrieked when I yanked the bat from her and took possession of it. She didn't have time to react when I drew back and caught her underneath her enhanced bounty. I was sure I heard some ribs cracking as Desmond cried out in pain and fell to her knees. Still, my rival wouldn't stay down. She groaned as she forced herself back to her feet. "Frost is mine," she declared. "I love him. You'll have to kill me first." I sure wished I still had my face so she could see how I'd have looked at her. But I think my silent response did just as well. I swung the bat on her again. I heard more than ribs cracking this time. Having supernaturally, maybe chemically enhanced strength sure made those blows hurt. One more blow with the bat made her drop to her side. She coughed and spat up. Pretty red. "I won't die here," Desmond continued declaring. "You can't have my man." I threw the bat into the pool and lifted Desmond up and off her feet so she could look directly into my face, or lack thereof. But she was still determined to fight for Frost, in spite of how badly I'd broken her. She suddenly grabbed hold of my hair and screamed. I tried to throw her away, but she held on fast. Even though she was in serious pain, she managed to maneuver her way onto my back and tug hard on my hair. Suddenly, my entire head of hair and my scalp came off in her hands. The flesh tore off at the back of my neck to send Desmond falling flat on her back. She had all my long hair and my scalp clutched in her hands. I was looking down at her now with my entire bald and bare skull revealed. Now I knew how Christopher Walken in Sleepy Hollow must have felt. Desmond had more of that pretty Valentine blood covering her mouth as she glared at me with a demented, determined expression. You can't have my man, she challenged me again before coughing up more. Beautiful. Red. I shook my skull slowly. And Frost certainly can't have both of us. I raised my finger. You know, maybe, just maybe, I could have been open to having a threesome with you if you'd just asked. But you convinced Frost to murder me. That's right. Don't think for a second I don't know you 1000% planned everything. I know my man, and I know you. It's simple, really. One of us has to die. I gasped with laughter. Since I'm already dead, I guess that only leaves you. I lowered myself to grab Desmond and yank her back to her feet. Then Desmond laughed her maniacal laughter again. I'll see you in hell, Mary Lee. Then that crazy bitch grabbed hold of my skull and kissed me full on the mouth, or, teeth. I could taste her blood as it seeped through my incisors and got on my tongue. When she finished, she tried turning my skull hard and fast to try and break it away from the rest of my body. I simply grabbed hold of her and lifted her up high before slamming her fast onto the concrete pool deck. And again, I heard bones breaking. One more time, Desmond coughed up. Pretty blood. This was truly it. Like I said moments ago, Frost could not have us both. The final act. Frost Mirren woke up and looked around. He remembered both his current wife and his undead one were fighting each other. When he finally saw the outcome, he stood up and moved to stand next to Desmond. He gasped when he saw what was left of Mary Lee, lying on her back in the Scream Queen costume, without the mask and only a bare skull for a head. You really beat her, Frost said in admiration of his living wife. Desmond smirked. You bet your ass I did. Then she let him come into her and hold her. She squeezed him lovingly. She can't have you. You're mine. Frost lost himself in Desmond as he kissed her passionately. When they came apart, they looked down at Mary Lee. What do we do with her? Frost asked. Desmond looked at the bonfire she had just created. Help me. We need to burn her body. Your former wife can't come after us again if there's nothing left of her. Frost quickly joined Desmond in lifting the Scream Queen's body off the ground and moving it to the bonfire. Fortunately, they lived just outside village limits, making their bonfire completely legal and common. When they reached the fire, they placed the Scream Queen in the flames. It didn't take long for the body to burn, just like logs fueling the fire. Frost and Desmond watched on as the body continued to burn. Desmond kept the fire from going out by splashing gasoline on it. However, the fire never reached the temperature necessary to burn the skeleton away completely. From there, Desmond went to the garage and brought back an axe, which she used to chop, break, and splinter the bones. When the skull was severed from the rest of the body, Desmond destroyed it with a single blow. It was only when Frost and Desmond were absolutely sure that their one demon would never return to haunt them ever again that they finally stopped. They took the remains and buried them where only they knew the location. Once they returned to the house, Frost knew he would have to get that oversized pickup truck out of his living room and get all the damage repaired. For the time being, Frost and Desmond would have to leave and go stay somewhere else. But was this Valentine's Day from hell truly over? After all, history has revealed time and time again that secrets didn't often stay buried.
If you thought that was scary, just you wait. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
1 year later, Frost woke up on Valentine's Day morning and felt Desmond mounting him for their usual morning sex. Today, Desmond seemed to be a real wife in heat as the two of them were alone in their house. She didn't seem to want to stop with the raw passion the two of them were making. Frost was quite willing to oblige her. As he satisfied Desmond again and again and caressed her soft flesh, he somehow felt deep down that something was quite different about his wild wife. Even fondling and squeezing her ample breasts felt somehow different. If he didn't know better, she seemed different after the previous Valentine's Day. But why would Frost have been worried? He was rid of his dead bride once and for all, right? He and Desmond both watched her burn until there was nothing left. During the night, he had had a nightmare again about how Mary Lee had returned as a charred skeleton to finish her revenge. Then he woke up and found his naked Desmond resting peacefully beside him. As for the Corgan twins, they couldn't really report the sinful couple to the police since there was no real proof. It would simply have been the Corgans' word against theirs. The Corgans returned the funding they had received from Frost for their movie and told both of them on no uncertain terms to never come anywhere near them ever again. Frost asked Desmond shortly after last Valentine's Day if he should track down the Corgan twins himself and kill them. After some careful thinking, Desmond suggested they should just keep their distance, at least for the time being. They won't talk, his wife reassured him. You can't really do anything without proof, and we destroyed what proof there was of your former wife, correct? Frost kissed her in response. I love you. Desmond kissed him back. I love you. Getting back to now, Desmond dismounted Frost and sexily got out of bed. She turned to face him, making sure he saw her ample assets. When his eyes were clearly fixated on them, she giggled. I'm going to go lather these up if you want to join me, she smirked. Or you can lather them up for me. Maybe all of me. Frost quickly got out of bed and followed her. Soon the two of them were continuing their wedding anniversary romp under the steaming spray of the shower. Desmond smiled as Frost made her feel loved again and again. Frost knew his wife was both dangerous and quite wicked, but he still loved her desperately. It was when he was pleasuring her from behind that he poured shower gel onto her scalp and worked it into a lather. As Desmond moaned, Frost heard a sickening plop and opened his eyes. He looked down to see a single eyeball. Oh no. Frost quickly turned me around to see I was without one of my eyes now. "What the?" Frost choked out. I squatted down and retrieved the eye. My husband watched as I easily stuck it back in. Soon I was whole again, finally understood everything. "Mary Lee? But, he pointed in a general direction. "But you," I laughed triumphantly. "Wrong," I raised my finger. "Dead wrong." Frost started sputtering again. Before long he was quiet when he took in my naked body. Frost listened as I explained everything. When Desmond was down, I peeled off her face and hair and was going to apply them to my bare skull, killing her in the process. In the darkness, Frost wouldn't be able to tell. However, once I applied Desmond's face and hair, my own skin came to life by taking the new skin as its own and healing me up to make me nearly whole again. All I had to do to finish was take her eyes and pop them in. I no longer had my own face and couldn't go by my own name, but at least I had a real face and was beautiful once again. From there, I swapped our clothes. Frost never suspected a thing when he woke up. Remember, he was unconscious. "That's right, lover," I purred. "You helped me throw Desmond's body into the fire." He gasped when I came into him and locked eyes. Then he found his balls. "Fine, go ahead. Get your revenge, Mary Lee. Kill me. That's what you came back for, right?" But our eyes were still locked together. Suddenly, Frost grabbed me and held me tight to him. I held him back as we shared a long, hungry kiss. I could even feel our hearts pounding together. He still held me to him. I stated the obvious. "You never truly stopped loving me, did you?" I looked up into his eyes. "You really missed me after you killed me." Knowing this made me cry. Frost couldn't hide his true feelings any longer. He began crying himself. I really messed up." When I put my hand on Frost's chest and felt his heart still pounding, I knew I had truly won him back, especially when he held me to him tightly and kissed me again. Did lightning striking that foul lake in the backwoods of Strickfield truly bring me back to life? Was my burning love for my man too powerful for even death to overcome? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. "How could you know about, well," Frost tried asking me. "Because, baby, I'm a horror fan," I cheered. "You've always known that about me." Then we gazed into each other's eyes again. "I have to keep being Desmond, so I guess you do get to keep us both after all, huh? If it makes you feel better, I won't be able to have all my horror stuff everywhere like I did before." I sighed. "I suppose you got rid of it all." He sighed himself. I tried, Mary Lee. Something deep down just wouldn't let me. Boy, did that ever piss Desmond off. Still, I was resolute on keeping every bit of it. She was mad as hell in the beginning, but she finally left it alone. Your horror stuff is all in the storage unit out back. One last test. I looked him right in the face. Now that you know the truth, I'm willing to give you one free opportunity to walk away from me. No strings attached. You can tell me to leave right here and now, without retribution. If you can look me right in the eyes and tell me, I promise with all my love for you that I'll leave you alone and never come back. Frost didn't hesitate. He grabbed me to him again and kissed me with all his love that he'd never lost for me. From there, he lifted me into his arms and took me back to bed, where we had lots and lots of reconciliation sex. He could never apologize enough or stop saying how much he missed me and loved me. I knew I never stopped loving him, in spite of what he and Desmond did to me 2 years ago today. He later admitted that I had more of the killer instinct in me than Desmond ever did. Well, I had returned from my watery grave in the backwoods of Strickfield to reclaim my man, didn't I? Then he asked me about the Corgan twins again. I already told you, they won't talk, I reminded him. Even now that things have changed, what can they do? Only you and I know the real truth now, and we'll take that secret to our graves. I caressed myself for him. Stop worrying about the Corgans, lover. Just be with me. Frost seemed to feel better about the situation now that his loving and loyal wife was back to assure him everything would be okay. As for all the people I killed, those deaths were never traced back to us. The police did come and ask us questions, but we were never suspects. Going forward, I think I expected Frost to try and kill me again. He had his hands around my neck a few times while we were showering together. Perhaps he might have been looking to snap my neck, but he eventually moved his hands to kiss and nibble on me there. Frost truly loved me too much to throw me away a second time. In fact, he would teach me everything he knew about Desmond. He only called me Mary Lee when it was just us together, but out and about, I was Desmond Mirren. I was able to fool her parents and everybody else who knew her that I hadn't killed a year ago. When it came to the Corgan twins, we'd come to learn that they truly hadn't forgotten about us. Those two redheads made a new horror movie based on our Valentine's night. Vicky Valentine reprised being the Scream Queen, and Belinda Barnett played an equivalent to Desmond, who was named Deidre. Also, somebody played Frost, but his name was changed to Snow. The title was Slasher, Valentine Scorn, and the movie would open today. Frost and I knew what we would be doing later. I could tell Frost was a little worried when we saw the movie, but I again assured him everything would be okay. When we left the Strickfield Centennial Theater, Frost took me home. We sat in the beautifully decorated and remodeled living room. My man insisted on Valentine's decorations, even promising me I could hang some horror ones. If anyone asked, Frost would say the decorations were his. He eased me to him so he could undress me. After we had some steamy wedding anniversary sex on the couch, we cuddled up together. As he caressed and squeezed me lovingly, he actually asked me if I wanted to watch another horror movie with him. Our eyes met. Are you serious? He kissed me to show he was. When we stopped, I smiled a little bit. But you hate horror. He gave me a look to say maybe he still did, but I know. I can't have you and not have horror. You're my life, Mary Lee. I love you. I won't let you go ever again. I can learn to like horror, especially after we just watched a movie made about us. So that was that. Frost and I watched the original My Bloody Valentine. Never once did he look upset. He didn't even fall asleep on me. And afterwards, we had more sex. Then we watched another horror movie together. I know what you're thinking. The story I just shared with you seems totally fucked up, doesn't it? But that's the beauty of love, isn't it? It always works in such mysterious ways. Happy Valentine's Day. Well, my spookies, I hope you enjoyed that very special Valentine's Day novella to make sure, regardless of whether your heart is lonely or cold, you had a good time, just like I did. So thank you again for joining us. And if you love novellas, if you love exclusive audiobooks, you can get a lot more over at weeklyspooky.com/join. We have exclusive audiobooks, exclusive mini-series, and so much more. You get 2 bonus shows every single month for as little as $1 a month when you go to weeklyspooky.com/join. It really means a lot. Your support helps me keep the show going as we head into our 6th year of the spooky, and I am so grateful for it. And remember, this Friday, we have the best of compilation of some of our greatest Valentine's Day horrors. So, be subscribed if you're not already, and head to weeklyspooky.com for everything else you could ever need to know about the show. And I want to say an extra special, humongous, loving thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their name on the show. And they are Jessica Fuller, Johnny Nix, Jenny Green, Amber Hansford, Brent McCullough, Karen Ouimet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much. And if you want to hear your name on the end of every episode of Weekly Spooky from my silky smooth voice, just go to weeklyspooky.com/join and select a tier at $15 a month or higher. Not only will you hear your voice on the show, but you'll be making a big difference on helping us keep it all going. But now, my friends, it's time for me to get back to work. There are so many more scares, including a story from Bruce Haney involving snow and death. So, for myself, for my executive producers Rob Fields, Mark Shields, and Bobbletopia.com, my producer Dan Wilder, and my composer Ray Mattis, I will talk at you next time.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.